You're in the middle of a heated exchange. Your heart's pounding, your mind racing, and every sentence feels like it's being loaded into a cannon. You're not listening anymore. You're just waiting for your turn to shoot. Sound familiar? This isn't about truth. It's about ego. You're not debating ideas. You're defending your identity. You think if you speak faster, louder, or with better logic, you'll win. But here's the truth nobody told you. The second you start reacting, you already lost. Most arguments aren't about finding clarity. They're about being seen as right. It's not about resolution. It's about validation. And that's why you leave these arguments drained. Because deep down, you're not trying to solve a problem. You're trying to protect your image. And image maintenance? It's exhausting. If you enjoy this type of video, remember to like and subscribe button. Think back to your last big argument. How much energy did you spend crafting comebacks? Replaying the conversation later in your head? Trying to prove to yourself that you weren't the one who looked weak? Here's a brutal truth. If you need to be right, you're already insecure about being wrong. And that insecurity leaks out in every over-explained point, every defensive reaction, every attempt to dominate the conversation. What if I told you that the most powerful person in the room isn't the one speaking? It's the one watching, the one who doesn't flinch, the one who doesn't rush to defend, the one who listens and makes others feel uncertain just by being still. Real power isn't loud. Real power doesn't beg to be understood. It stands in silence and lets the noise burn itself out. So the question is, are you trying to win or are you trying to control? Silence is uncomfortable, and that's exactly why it's powerful. You've been conditioned to fill every gap, to reply fast, to never leave someone hanging. But here's what no one tells you. Every time you rush to respond, you give away your power. You reveal your emotional state. You show your need to be heard. And that need, that's leverage for the other person. Nietzsche had a word for this weakness: reactivity. He believed that the person who reacts is the one who's already been dominated. Because the moment someone can control your reaction, they control you. And the one who stays calm, not because they're passive, but because they choose when to act, that person is dangerous. Think about a chess master. They don't rush. They don't play emotionally. They study the board. They let the opponent move first. And when they strike, it's with precision. That's the kind of silence we're talking about. Not avoidance, not cowardice, strategic stillness. There's a story. Maybe you've lived it. You're in a meeting. One person is loud, trying to dominate the room. Another says almost nothing. But when they do speak, the room quiets. Why? Because they've built tension. They've created weight through restraint. And when words finally come, they land like thunder. The silence made space for power. In a world addicted to noise, silence becomes a weapon. It disorients. It commands. It reframes the entire dynamic. And here's the twist. When you master the silence, you stop playing defense. You start controlling the rhythm of the interaction. So next time your blood starts to boil, try this. Say nothing. Not because you don't know what to say, but because you're choosing when to say it. That's the first step to real control. People are terrified of silence. Not yours, theirs. When you go quiet, something strange happens. The other person starts to squirm. They fill the space. They over-explain. They reveal more than they intended. Because most people aren't looking for truth. They're looking for affirmation. And silence feels like rejection. It's like holding up a mirror. No words, no judgment, just stillness. And that stillness forces them to confront their own insecurity. Here's the psychological trick. When you don't react, the other person starts reacting to themselves. They second-guess their words. They wonder what you're thinking. They project their own doubts into your silence. That's power. Picture this. Two people are arguing. One's talking fast, getting louder, agitated. The other just watches. Calm, unreadable. Guess who owns the room? Not the one shouting. The one who makes the other feel exposed without saying a word. Because silence isn't passive. It's pressure. It builds tension. And tension creates discomfort. And when people are uncomfortable, they get sloppy. They reveal their weak spots. They try too hard. They show their need for control. You don't need to attack. You let them implode on their own. Think of it like this. Words are arrows, but silence? Silence is gravity. You don't shoot. You pull. You let the other person lean in, stretch, overextend, and then collapse under their own weight. This isn't manipulation, it's awareness. It's choosing not to play the same noisy, ego-driven game as everyone else. So next time you're in a charged moment, don't fill the space. Let the silence do the talking, and watch how quickly control shifts into your hands. Silence doesn't just expose others, it exposes you. How comfortable are you with stillness? Not just around people, but within yourself. Because the way you sit with silence says everything about your inner world. Most people can't stand it. They talk just to escape their own thoughts. They argue not to win, but to avoid feeling uncertain. Because if they stop talking, they might have to feel something, and that terrifies them. But here's the raw truth. If your identity relies on constantly being heard, you're not in control. You're addicted to noise, dependent on reaction, and that makes you fragile. The calmest person in the room isn't the one who's suppressing rage. It's the one who doesn't need the room to validate anything, because their power doesn't come from proving, it comes from knowing. Let me be clear, silence is not the absence of words. It's the presence of composure. It's a declaration, I don't need to perform for you. Think of a lion. It doesn't roar every time it walks into the room. It doesn't need to. Its presence is enough. That's you, when you learn to use silence with intention. And yes, it will feel unnatural at first. When someone disrespects you and you say nothing. When someone challenges you and you just pause. But that pause, that stillness, that's where your power lives. Here's a simple challenge. Next time you feel triggered, count to 3 in silence before responding. That's it. Just 3 seconds. It'll feel like a lifetime, because you're not used to control. But that space is where transformation begins, because if you can master the pause, you can master yourself. Let's make one thing clear. Not all silence is power. Sometimes, silence is just fear with a filter. You've seen it. Maybe you've done it. You avoid the conversation. You let people cross your boundaries. You bite your tongue, not because you're strategic, but because you're scared. And then you tell yourself it's wisdom. It's not worth it. I'm just choosing peace. You're choosing comfort. You're choosing to stay small. There's a difference between restraint and avoidance. Restraint is conscious. It's control. Avoidance is fear dressed up as self-control. And here's the irony. The same silence that can give you power can also strip it away. Because when you're silent out of fear, people feel it. They sense the hesitation. They see the passivity. And they adjust their behavior accordingly. By respecting you less, you think staying quiet will protect you, but sometimes silence invites more disrespect. Because if you don't defend your boundaries, someone else will define them for you. Let me give you an example. There's a difference between calmly holding eye contact and saying nothing versus looking down and shrinking away in silence. Both are quiet, but only one is powerful. The Übermensch, Nietzsche's ideal individual, doesn't run from confrontation. He simply chooses when it matters. He steps in when it serves a greater purpose, not when his ego is triggered or his fear takes the wheel. So ask yourself, am I being silent because I'm calculating or because I'm collapsing? Because silence without intent isn't strength, it's surrender, and no one respects a ghost. Here's the final line that separates the weak from the powerful. Reactors talk. Strategists choose. Most people speak because they feel forced to. They respond out of habit, out of anger, out of fear of looking weak. They argue to defend their identity, to win approval, to escape discomfort. But none of that is strength. That's emotional debt disguised as confidence. Real power doesn't react, it selects. It decides when, how, and if it even needs to respond. Because sometimes the greatest move you can make is no move at all. Think about this. If someone insults you and you bite back, they've controlled you. If someone challenges you and you rush to defend, they've exposed your insecurity. But if you pause, if you observe, if you respond on your terms, in your timing, with intention, you've already won. It's not about staying silent forever. It's about earning your words. It's about turning every sentence into a decision, not a reaction. So here's the exercise. Imagine tomorrow, you wake up and someone tells you, you only get 100 words today. That's it. 100. Suddenly, every reply matters. Every word is a weapon. Would you waste them defending your pride in a pointless argument? Or would you choose them like a warrior sharpening his final blade? This is what the quiet power move really is. Restraint with purpose. Stillness with presence. Silence that commands, not hides. And in a world where everyone's trying to be loud, fast, and first, the one who waits, the one who watches, the one who speaks last, often speaks with the most impact. So here's your next level. Don't just speak less. Speak only when it shifts the room. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to click the like and subscribe button.